I think medical marijuana should be legalized because of its amazing health benefits. When I got sciatica from moving heavy objects, medical marijuana not only helped with my pain, but made me feel a lot better when I was walking around. Not only that, but it's helped countless of my friends who either have a family member or have seizures themselves, made the seizures either go away completely or decrease them from having multiple seizures to either a few a day or being able to actually get around and do everything normally. And by helping muscular pain and seizures not alone, when one of my family members got cancer, medical marijuana was not only able to help them, but it was able to mitigate a lot of the symptoms and ultimately kill a lot of the cancer cells, which I did the research and I can see the medical marijuana helps with cancer relief as well. So with all these benefits, helping with muscular pain, helping with seizures, helping people who have cancer, there's no reason not to want to legalize medical marijuana so it can help the millions of people and the millions of Americans who suffer from these conditions in a natural and safe way. Because I've seen other people and myself try pharmaceutical drugs off the shelf and it had bad effects. It's not something that I would recommend to anyone.
For thousands of years, humanity has been using the cannabis plant to treat various medical conditions. The ancient Chinese, Egyptian and Greek peoples all recognized the immense medical potential of this often misunderstood plant. Thousands of years later, in the most technologically advanced age of human history, medical marijuana is a controversial topic. The early 20th century saw a vilification and prohibition of marijuana, a movement born out of greed, lies and racism. Only now are scientists beginning to confirm what the ancients knew, that marijuana is one of the most medically applicable plants Mother Nature has to offer. Medical marijuana has the potential to treat a wide range of psychological and physiological conditions, from cancer to PTSD. Nevertheless, the illegality of marijuana and the war on drugs has stifled research into the drug. It is time to dispel the lies and address the facts. Join us on an exploration of one of the most astounding and controversial plants to ever sprout.
Hi, I am Amit. I am from India, and I think selling marijuana should be made legal because of its medicinal properties. A lot of research has proved that marijuana is very helpful in treating a lot of diseases like joint pain, eye ailments, etc. So that's why I think it should be made legal. Also, it can be a good source of income for the farmers, and it can be also a good source of revenue generation for the government. And also I think that if cigarette and alcohol are legal, then why not marijuana, which is considered to be less addictive? Thank you.
It is a story of thousands of years and millions of people. It is the story of a herb called cannabis and a drug called marijuana. Infamous but misunderstood, the psychoactive drug marijuana has been one of the most controversial substances of the past 2 centuries. Often known as weed or cannabis, marijuana has been used for thousands of years both recreationally and medically. The 21st century has seen a rise in the awareness of the medical benefits of using the marijuana. This documentary shall explore the origins, uses, and benefits of medical marijuana. But what exactly is the drug marijuana? Marijuana, also referred to as weed or cannabis, is a drug derived from the cannabis herb, sometimes referred to as hemp. there are 3 known species of the cannabis plant, all of which are indigenous to Central Asia and easily recognisable by its unique leaf pattern. The cannabis plant produces a group of chemicals called cannabinoids. These cause a range of physical and mental effects when consumed. In drug form, the plant usually comes in the form of a dried flower buds called marijuana, a resin called hashish, or various extracts known collectively as hashish oils. The main psychoactive properties of the plant come from the flower of the plant rather than the leaves, as is sometimes assumed. Cannabis is the 4th most popular recreational drug on earth, behind caffeine, alcohol and tobacco. In the United States alone, an estimated 100 million Americans have, or do, use marijuana recreationally. The main effects of recreational marijuana include a feeling of relaxation and slight euphoria. The side effects often include feelings of hunger or a possible increase in heart rate. The effects of moderate recreational use usually wear off within 3 hours. The most common ways in which marijuana is used include smoking like a cigarette, using a pipe, using a bong, a vaporizer, or sometimes ingested when included ingredients in foods, the most famous of these being the weed brownie. In most countries, the perceived adverse effects of recreational marijuana upon society and the individual has led to the possession, sale and use of marijuana to be made illegal. In recent years, the illegality of marijuana has come under scrutiny by many doctors, scientists and researchers who cite the medical benefits of the drug's properties upon individuals suffering from a range of ailments such as Alzheimer's, cancer, Crohn's disease, glaucoma, multiple sclerosis, nausea, PTSD and general pain. In its various medical uses, the drug is known as medical marijuana to separate it from its more common recreational uses. The term medical marijuana refers to the use of the whole, unprocessed marijuana plant and its pure extracts in treating a psychological or physiological condition. It must be sourced from a medical-grade cannabis plant that has been meticulously grown without the use of toxic pesticides and fertilizers. Despite calls for fewer restrictions, the FDA is yet to approve it as a medical treatment, stating that there still have not been enough studies proving the safety and effectiveness of the drug. One reason for this lack of research is due to the fact that the DEA considers marijuana a Schedule 1 drug, the same category as substances such as LSD, heroin and ecstasy. Because of this, researchers are required to possess a special license to study the beneficial aspects. Another reason for the limited application and research of medical marijuana is the fact that more than a century marijuana has been vilified by the media. For example, one particularly absurd infomercial from the 90s shows 2 young men socialising when suddenly one of them starts to smoke marijuana. Seconds later, the boy has shot himself in the head with a rifle in an apparent fit of hysteria. This is a wild exaggeration of the effects of marijuana. The drug does not cause any suicidal fits of madness, and those who partake in such fear-mongering are the very people who understand the drug the least. This documentary aims to dispel the myths and address the facts. We shall explore the effects and functions of the drug and how it can be applied logically to medical benefit of many who are suffering both physically and mentally. However, in order to fully understand marijuana, we must start at the beginning. The uses of cannabis by humans dates back to at least 3000 BC. Ancient humans valued the plant for its medical and recreational uses, as well as the plant's ability to be turned into rope and fibre. The psychoactive properties of the drug were especially popular for religious and ritual uses. Cannabis has a history of medical use dating back thousands of years and was first used by the ancient peoples of India, China and Japan. In China, the use of cannabis in medicine was probably of very early development. The ancient Chinese regularly used the plant in cooking, so the discovery of its medicinal properties was a natural progression from this. In 2737 BC, the Chinese Emperor Sheng Nung, who was also a pharmacologist, wrote a book on medical treatments methods which included a section on the medical benefits of the cannabis plant. The emperor recommended using cannabis for ailments such as constipation, gout and rheumatism. Cannabis is still considered one of the 50 fundamental herbs of traditional Chinese medicine. In India, cannabis is also mentioned in the Hindu Vedas texts dating to between 2000 and 1400 BC. Cannabis use also became a ritual part of the Hindu festival of Holi. The cannabis plant soon spread from East Asia to the Middle East and Africa via trade. An Egyptian papyrus from 1550 BC describes medical cannabis and recommends its use for pain relief. The ancient Assyrians also obtained the plant from trade with the East and soon discovered its psychoactive properties. The Assyrian word for marijuana was qunub, and this is likely the etymological origin of the name cannabis. The cannabis plant eventually spread from the Middle East to Europe. The ancient Greeks used cannabis to dress wounds and sores, and cannabis seeds were also used to get rid of tapeworms. The first Greek historian, Herodotus, tells us that the Scythian peoples of Eurasia would take cannabis steam baths, creating a kind of cannabis sauna. In the medieval Islamic world, Arabic physicians made frequent use of all parts of the cannabis plant. The plant's use included its application as an anti-inflammatory medicine and diuretic. The plant was used extensively as a medicine in the Middle East up until at least the 18th century. The use of cannabis medically in Europe was less common, and its widespread medicinal use was only seen during the 19th century. In 1842, an Irish physician named William O'Shaughnessy was studying the drug in India whilst working as an officer in the East India Company. When O'Shaughnessy brought samples of the substances back with him to Europe, it provoked a wave of new interest in marijuana across the Western world, and the drug was soon included as an ingredient in many medicines. During his studies in India, O'Shaughnessy had found that marijuana was effective at treating stomach pain and vomiting in people suffering from cholera. By the late 1800s, cannabis extracts were being sold in pharmacies and doctors' offices across Europe and the United States. These cannabis products were being used to treat stomach problems and a range of other ailments. Towards the end of the 19th century, the popularity of cannabis was declining. This was due to the rise of more popular opium-derived drugs. Another reason for the decline of medical cannabis in the 19th century was the rise of the hypodermic needle. Cannabis is not water-soluble and cannot be injected. This then meant that drugs which could be injected became more popular due to the immediate effect of an injected drug. The decline of cannabis was also due to its eventual restrictions on its proliferation in various countries. The British colonies of Mauritius, for example, restricted cannabis use in 1840 over concerns on its effect on Indian indentured workers. The same occurred in British Singapore in 1870. In the United States, the first restrictions on the sale of cannabis came in 1906, and in the 1920s, concerns over its effects on workers led to its restriction in Jamaica, South Africa, the United Kingdom, New Zealand and Canada. However, the true criminalisation came as a result of US policies in the 1930s, just after the failed prohibition of another drug, alcohol. In 1937, the United States passed the Marijuana Tax Act and prohibited the production of hemp in addition to cannabis. By 1941, the use of cannabis in medicine had ceased. When the war on drugs began, the US passed and Controlled Substances Act of 1970, which replaced the Marijuana Tax Act. This act, signed by Richard Nixon, made marijuana a Schedule I drug, thus meaning that the drug was perceived to have no medical uses and a high potential for abuse. Nixon's policies towards marijuana were especially harsh and based upon limited research into the substance's potential medical benefits. In 1972, a report from the National Commission of Marijuana and Drug Abuse released a report titled Marijuana, a Signal of Misunderstanding. The report called for lower penalties for possession of marijuana and recommended it only be partially prohibited rather than fully criminalised. Nixon and his government ignored the report. Interest in the medical benefits of cannabis saw renewed interest in the 1970s and 80s. One of the main reasons for this was the advent of AIDS. Patients suffering from AIDS reported that use of marijuana alleviated much of the pain caused by chemotherapy and wasting syndrome. Not all countries followed America's drug war policies. The earliest country to decide upon a more liberal policy towards marijuana was the Netherlands. In 1972, the Dutch government divided drugs into more and less dangerous categories, with cannabis being in the lesser category. Accordingly, possession of 30 grams or less was made a misdemeanour. Cannabis has been available for use in coffee shops since 1976, with no real negative effects upon Dutch society as a whole. Cannabis products are only sold openly in certain local coffee shops, and possession of up to 5 grams for personal use is decriminalised. In recent years, many more countries have adopted liberal policies towards marijuana. In Canada, the election of Justin Trudeau and the formation of a more liberal government has led to the complete decriminalisation of marijuana across the country. In the US, medical use of marijuana has recently been decriminalised in 29 states and the District of Columbia. The first US state to legalise marijuana for medical use was California in 1996. However, it is still illegal from the federal government's perspective, thus significantly hampering research into its potential benefits and ensuring that thousands of people are imprisoned each year for possession of the drug. The Obama administration did not make prosecuting medical marijuana even a minor priority. President Donald Trump promised not to interfere with people who use medical marijuana, though his administration is currently threatening to reverse this policy. About 85% of Americans support legalising medical marijuana, and it is estimated that at least several million Americans currently use it. Across the world, awareness of the benefits of medical marijuana are spreading.
Marijuana has been successfully used to help people with serious health issues, especially with cancer patients. It delays the advance of cancer cells and kills the cancer cells in leukemia patients. It can also be used to treat blindness caused by glaucoma by reducing the pressure inside the eye. It can also be used to manage nausea and weight loss. Marijuana is said to be a muscle relaxant. Not only does it allow us to broaden our sensory spectrum, but it allows us to relax when we need optimal blood supply. It also helps people with chronic pain and doesn't seem to harm capacity and may even improve it. Emotional pain can just be as devastating and dangerous to patients as physical pain. Conditions like anxiety, depression can lead to poor mood, lackluster performance at work, and even relationships, thoughts of self-harm or suicide. Current medication for these emotional disorders can have various side effects and may not be helpful to the individuals. Marijuana offers many patients with mood disorders an effective alternative.
Countries that allow the medical use of whole plant cannabis include Australia, Canada, Chile, Colombia, Germany, Greece, Israel, Italy, the Netherlands, Peru, Poland, Portugal, the United Kingdom and Uruguay. But how does it affect the body? The main psychoactive ingredient of marijuana is a chemical compound known as THC. THC is the chemical which produces what is known as the high in its recreational users. The effects of THC on the human mind and body are primarily responsible for its controversial legal status across the world. The effects of this compound are relatively tame in comparison to drugs such as alcohol and include slight euphoria, relaxation, heightened sensory perception, and feelings of increased appetite, commonly known as the munchies. Negative effects often take the form of increased anxiety, dry mouth, impaired motor function, and the reddening of the eyes. Cannabis usually causes no tolerance or withdrawal symptoms except in those who use the drug regularly. From around 9% of those who use marijuana develop any kind of addiction upon the drug, and this is usually linked to underlying lifestyle and mental issues. Symptoms of withdrawal in these cases are usually limited to irritability, boredom, anxiety, and sleep disturbances. Dependence upon marijuana is rarer and less medically serious than dependence upon tobacco and alcohol. Those who use marijuana sensibly to treat medical issues are at a very low risk of forming any kind of dependency issues. The negative effects of THC are more common in people who use more marijuana than has been recommended, or if the cannabis is unexpectedly potent. In fact, the amount of THC in recreational marijuana has increased dramatically in recent decades. In the mid-1990s, the average THC content of weed was only around 4%. By 2014, this had increased to about 12%, and some recent strains have even seen highs of 37%. As with most drugs, it is important to know the source of supply in order to avoid unexpected results. In states where medical marijuana is legal, the drug is usually obtained from professionally recommended dispensaries with known chemical composition. The selective breeding of marijuana to produce more THC seems to have begun in the 1960s, when psychoactive drugs were in high demand. This is one of the reasons the Nixon administration took a harder stance towards marijuana. Like LSD, marijuana was perceived as a risk to traditional American society. Government reactionaries were concerned, and likely scared, by the liberal actions and views of the younger generations, and linked marijuana to their behaviour.
How do you feel? Well, I feel very fine. I feel very buoyant and light and resilient. I feel as though this chair is not as solid as it seems to be. I have a feeling that my hands are not resting against this chair, and I see flashes of color quite a bit. I see this rug, for example, seems to have an awful lot of complements of violet and yellow. I see a lot of violets and yellows.
THC, however, is one of around 483 known compounds within the cannabis plant. The least controversial extract of the cannabis plant is known as CBD. CBD has little, if any, intoxicating effects upon the user, and CBD dominant strains of the cannabis plant are primarily used medically. The cannabinoids of CBD are similar to chemicals produced in the human body and are found in leaves and flowers of the cannabis plant. There is no one strain of cannabis plant which is known as medical marijuana. The term applies to a variety of different strains, and this often leads to misunderstanding. Of the over 400 different chemicals present in the cannabis plant, many cannabis medications only contain one or two of these. The sheer number of active chemicals in marijuana is one of the reasons why treatments such as cannabis are difficult to classify and study. This is also one of the reasons why further study of the plant needs to be encouraged. Patients have reported many positive effects of the CBD compound. For example, some report that the substance has assisted in the relief of insomnia, anxiety, spasticity, and CBD has also been noticed to have been an effect upon patients suffering from epilepsy. The symptoms of one particular form of childhood epilepsy, called Dravet syndrome, has responded positively to a strain of marijuana called Charlotte's Web. Charlotte's Web is a strain of cannabis high in CBD, which does not include the psychoactive properties of THC. The relationship between cannabis and epilepsy has seen limited research and would benefit from further studies. The most common use of medical marijuana in the US is for pain control. Whilst marijuana is not potent enough to alleviate severe pain from injuries such as broken bones, it is very effective for the treatment of persistent chronic pain, an ailment which affects millions of Americans, especially the elderly. For instance, marijuana had proven highly effective for treating the symptoms of arthritis, especially when applied in cream or balm form. Marijuana is in fact a safer treatment for pain than many other painkiller drugs. Unlike many opiates or drugs, it is impossible to overdose on marijuana. These drugs are also highly sedating, whereas medical marijuana allows patients to resume their previous activities without feeling entirely lethargic. One of the ways marijuana could be used to treat pain is through the use of CBD oil. CBD oil does not cause any kind of high and simply reduces pain and inflammation. In a 2016 study on the effects of CBD upon rats suffering from arthritis, researchers noticed that the application of CBD led to reduced inflammation and pain in the rat's joints. Current research into CBD oil is limited at present, but the results we do have look very promising. Currently, however, the FDA has not approved the use of medical marijuana for pain relief. Marijuana can also be used as muscle relaxant. For example, many sufferers of Parkinson's disease have reported that medical marijuana helps to lessen their tremors. Marijuana can also help reduce the tremors and spasms which result in sufferers in multiple sclerosis. Another use of medical marijuana is in the treatment of nausea. Chemical compounds present in the cannabis plant interact with the brain's receptors which deal with feelings of nausea. The benefits of this were first noticed in patients suffering from AIDS, but it can also be beneficial to those who are undergoing chemotherapy. Marijuana has proven to be a far more effective anti-nausea drug than more conventional drugs used to treat chemotherapy-induced nausea. Marijuana can also be used by patients suffering from HIV to assist with wasting syndrome and the general pain associated with the condition. There is also some evidence to support the possibility that marijuana assists with weight problems and diabetes. Cannabinoids with marijuana have been shown to help regulate insulin levels and manage caloric intake more effectively. One of the most effective possible uses of medical marijuana is in the treatment of glaucoma. Glaucoma is a disease of the optic nerve, the cable that carries visual information from the eyes to the brain. Damage caused by glaucoma to the optic nerve can result in vision loss and eventually complete blindness. Current treatments for glaucoma focus upon lowering eye pressure. These include eye drop medication, laser treatment and operation room surgery. However, there are individuals for whom these treatments have proven ineffective and have resulted in unwanted side effects. This has led some to search for alternative medications to treat the condition, especially marijuana. The THC in marijuana causes the pressure buildup around the eyes caused by glaucoma to subside. Current clinical trials have been testing the ways of applying THC, with studies focusing primarily upon pill and eye drop applications. It is not currently recommended to smoke marijuana to treat glaucoma, as the effects of reduced eye pressure only last as long as the effects of the drug itself, meaning that extremely regular smoking of marijuana would be required, and this is in no way recommended. Although more studies are clearly needed before any firm conclusions can be drawn, the existing research shows promising signs that medical marijuana may one day be an effective treatment for glaucoma. Another promising area of research is in the potential benefits of using medical marijuana to treat Crohn's disease. Crohn's disease, also known as inflammatory bowel disease, causes inflammation in the digestive tract. Symptoms of the disease include abdominal pain, severe diarrhea, fatigue, weight loss and malnutrition. A number of studies of the effects of THC in marijuana on patients suffering from Crohn's disease have shown positive results. In 2011, a study published in the Israel Medical Association Journal presented the results of the first ever research study into the effects of cannabis on Crohn's. all 30 patients who had responded negatively to all other treatments stated that the application of medical marijuana improved their symptoms. In 2013, another study was published in the journal Clinical Gastroenterology and Hepatology. The study revealed all patients experienced a greater improvement in symptoms. More research is needed, however, before the medical community unanimously accepts the treatment of Crohn's with medical marijuana, as it is currently unclear whether marijuana fights the disease or simply masks the symptoms. Nevertheless, 29 states in the US have permitted patients suffering from Crohn's to obtain medical marijuana as treatment. It is recommended that patients first consult with their doctor. If the doctor is registered with a state medical marijuana program and agrees that the treatment is appropriate, a certificate and ID will be given to the patient to allow them to acquire medical marijuana from a dispensing facility. Many also report the use of marijuana helps them to maintain healthy blood pressure levels. Indeed, some studies have noted a link between cannabinoids and reduced hypertension. This is especially important to the American population. 1 in 3 Americans suffer from hypertension. Perhaps the most significant use of marijuana, however, is in the treatment of cancer. Recent scientific studies have shown that cannabinoids present within all strains of the cannabis plant fight certain types of cancer. Studies in mice and rats have shown that cannabinoids inhibit tumour growth by causing cell death, blocking cell growth, and blocking the development of the blood vessels needed for tumours to grow. Further studies have also shown that cannabinoids may be able to kill cancer cells while protecting normal healthy cells. One study revealed that cannabinoids protect against inflammation of the colon, thus reducing the risk of colon cancer. Cannabinoids have also been shown to be effective against liver cancer, where they are able to attack and kill tumours on the liver. Similar results have also been found with breast cancer. Further studies of CBD have shown that it may increase the effectiveness of chemotherapy. There is evidence to suggest that CBD helps to increase cancer cell death without harming normal cells whilst undergoing chemotherapy. Medical marijuana has even been used to treat STDs, especially herpes. Herpes is a highly contagious virus which is not only spread sexually but by something as little as a kiss or sharing lipstick. The 3 main drugs used to treat herpes can all cause unpleasant side effects such as headaches, vomiting and diarrhea. As a result, many sufferers have looked to more natural remedies. Cannabis is one of the main drugs people have turned to. Studies from 1980, 91 and 2004 have shown that cells infected with the herpes virus stop replicating when treated with THC from the cannabis plant. The 1991 study also showed that THC could inhibit the infectious nature of the virus, thus reducing infection rates. Cannabinoids were also found to reduce the pain caused by the herpes virus. THC oils and creams especially help fight against the spread and pain of sores. The benefits of medical marijuana are not limited to the treatment of physical conditions. The drug can also greatly benefit those suffering from psychological conditions such as PTSD. A recent study published in Molecular Psychiatry showed that treatment using particular compounds found in marijuana may benefit those with PTSD, and that cannabinoids may possess some benefits in individuals with PTSD by helping relieve haunting nightmares and other symptoms. Many veterans suffering from PTSD have found that the sensible use of medical marijuana has helped them to reconnect with their emotions in a healthy and safe way. Research published in Science Daily has revealed that medical marijuana helps to decrease the mental re-experiencing of traumatic experiences and allows sufferers to better confront situations which may remind them of the trauma. Medical marijuana has also helped many deal with the chronic physical pain associated with their past trauma and assist them with their anxiety and insomnia issues. However, medical marijuana should never be used as the sole treatment of PTSD. It is important that sufferers use the drug in conjunction with other therapies, and especially important that they join peer group support. Similarly, positive results have been found in the treatment of depression using medical marijuana. Researchers from Washington State University have noticed that adults reported a reduction in depression symptoms by using marijuana that is low in THC but high in CBD. The study also found that marijuana high in both CBD and THC helped to reduce anxiety and stress. Overall, the 12,000 users who took part in the study stated that the symptoms of their depression on average halved. The study also showed CBD to be the most important ingredient of marijuana when dealing with depressive symptoms. Another important find showed that chronic long-term use should be avoided, as this could exacerbate the depressive symptoms. Moderation is the best course of action when using medical marijuana, so that a dependency upon the drug does not form. There is also research underway studying the effects of medical marijuana upon sufferers of ADHD. People with ADHD are often restless, unable to focus upon tasks, and sometimes find it difficult to stay quiet. Treatment for ADHD usually involves the prescription of Ritalin or Adderall. These are believed to help correct the levels of neurotransmitters in the brain called dopamine, and thus reduce the symptoms of ADHD. However, these drugs can have unpleasant side effects, and some have turned to marijuana as a treatment option, as marijuana is believed to have the same effect upon dopamine levels. Current research is in its early stages, however, so it is not currently recommended to treat ADHD sufferers with any kind of cannabinoid until there is clear evidence. It is especially important not to allow children with ADHD access to any kind of marijuana product. The brain of a child is still developing, and using marijuana can alter mental development, leading to harmful cognitive effects. Recent scientific studies have shown that THC and CBD could be used to treat the symptoms of Alzheimer's. A laboratory study on mice with symptoms of Alzheimer's showed that a combination of CBD and THC helped to improve memory and reduced the visual symptoms of the disease. Medical marijuana may also be a viable treatment for OCD. OCD is a kind of anxiety disorder where an individual has unwanted and recurring thoughts, obsessions, sensations or ideas. These usually compel the sufferer to repeat actions compulsively. Currently, around 2.2 million Americans suffer from OCD. Currently, doctors treat the disorder with a combination of medication such as anti-anxiety and antidepressant drugs and psychotherapy. Although current medications are usually effective, they often have unwanted side effects. For example, antidepressants can cause headaches, nausea, agitation, drowsiness, and insomnia. The negative effects of currently used drugs have led some to turn to marijuana. There is a possibility that medical marijuana, especially strains high in CBD and low in THC, can help OCD patients deal with much of the anxiety and stress their condition causes. However, the link between OCD and cannabis needs to be an area of further study. Studies have also been performed into the possible treatment of Tourette's syndrome using medical marijuana. Tourette's is a psychiatric disorder which begins in childhood and is characterised by uncontrollable verbal and physical tics. Some common tics are eye blinking, coughing, throat clearing, sniffing, facial movements and verbalisations. In most cases, medication for Tourette's is not necessary. However, some scientists have hypothesised that medical marijuana could be an effective treatment for the syndrome's symptoms. Some studies have shown that when patients suffering from Tourette's used the cannabinoid drug dronabinol, there was an improvement in symptoms with no adverse side effects. Although smoking marijuana is the most common method of administration in the recreational use of the drug, this is not always the best way of using cannabis medically. Smoking a hand-rolled joint is considered to be one of the least effective ways of administering marijuana, as much of the drug is lost through the smoke as the joint burns. The smoke from a joint can also be an irritant in the lungs, and this method is not recommended for anyone suffering from lung damage. A healthier way of using the drug medically is through the use of a vaporizer or a water pipe known as a bong. This negates the harmful chemicals which can be inhaled through smoke. The inhalation of medical marijuana allows the patient to titrate the dosage depending upon their needs. Inhalation causes almost instantaneous effects as the medication is rapidly taken into the lungs and absorbed into the bloodstream. Cannabinoid medicine are often applied in pill, oil or spray form. The spray is developed from THC and CBD extracts, mixed with alcohol and peppermint flavouring, and is applied into the mouth. This is usually prescribed to those suffering from multiple sclerosis. The oils too can be applied in the mouth, often under the tongue. This allows for the rapid uptake of the drug into the bloodstream. Oils are also commonly applied to the skin to treat inflammation, arthritis or muscle pain. Although medical use of cannabis is now legal in many states, many of those only allow for its use in oil, pill or spray forms. Most states also only permit the use of medical marijuana under certain medical circumstances, recognised and diagnosed by a doctor. When considering the use of medical marijuana, it is essential to make sure that the medicine has been sourced from medical-grade cannabis plants that have not been chemically treated. It is also important to find a knowledgeable cannabis physician who can properly advise on the dosage and methods for application. While medical cannabis use is increasing, there are major social and legal barriers which lead to cannabis research proceeding more slowly and differently from standard medical research. Legal restrictions upon marijuana have resulted in an unbelievable number of people being swallowed up by the United States prison industrial complex. 8 million people were arrested between 2001 and 2010 for possession of marijuana in the USA, feeding America's already absurdly large prison population. Black Americans have been particularly targeted for marijuana possession. In fact, African Americans are 4 times more likely to be imprisoned for possession of marijuana. In 2016, more people were arrested for marijuana possession than for rape and murder, and someone is arrested for marijuana possession every 45 seconds. Every year, vast amounts of money are wasted trying to combat marijuana use. Cannabis prohibition costs American taxpayers $3 billion, money which could go into medical research. In the future, this will perhaps seem absurd as the alcohol prohibitions of the 1920s. Even more so, considering that alcohol is many times more dangerous than marijuana. Every year, alcohol abuse kills around 90,000 Americans. Marijuana kills no one. So how is it that so much trouble can be caused by what is essentially an herb? The real reasons for the illegality of marijuana are surprising and should make us all question the people who are dictating our laws. In 1929, a man called Harry Anslinger became the head of the Department of Prohibition. Alcohol prohibition had been a complete disaster. Alcohol production was now controlled by gangsters, and it had become more poisonous. Up until this point, Anslinger had refused to ban marijuana. He stated that there is no more absurd fallacy than the idea that cannabis makes people violent. However, once it became clear that prohibition had failed and the ban on alcohol was lifted, Anslinger's department was now entirely pointless. It needed a new purpose. Mr. Anslinger therefore turned on cannabis. He told the people that marijuana has the effect of causing delirious rage, turning a man into a wild beast, and finally leading to complete insanity. The plant was named the demon weed. Anslinger tried to find medical backing for his claim. He asked 30 leading scientists whether marijuana could plausibly be said to pose a threat to society and the individual. 29 of these scientists wrote back to him saying that marijuana posed no threat at all. Anslinger's job was done, however, and a wave of panic spread through America and marijuana was criminalised. The USA then bullied other nations such as Mexico to do the same. Initially, Mexico refused, stating that it made no sense to criminalise marijuana. The US then cut off painkiller supplies to the country until they capitulated. Anslinger also bullied many of America's scientists into compliance. Those who suggested that independent studies should be done to ascertain the drug's dangers were threatened and told to be quiet. But why was Henry Anslinger so against marijuana? He was the nephew-in-law of Andrew Mellon, the largest shareholder in the DuPont Chemical and Energy Company. DuPont were nervous about the fact that Henry Ford's new cars could be run using a hemp-based fuel, and so Anslinger was encouraged to focus upon hemp's danger as drug rather than its economic potential. Anslinger had allies. Perhaps the most significant of these was William Randolph Hearst, the owner of a huge chain of newspapers. Hearst had invested heavily in timber production to produce the paper used to support the production of his newspapers, and did not want to see hemp paper become a commonly used alternative. His newspapers helped to spread lies about marijuana. He especially liked to draw a link between racial minorities and the drug. Much of the anti-marijuana drive of this era was based upon racism. In 1934, newspapers released a statement saying that marijuana influences Negroes to look at white people in the eye, step on white men's shadows, and look at white women twice. Marijuana was also linked to Mexicans, a group Hearst especially liked to demonize in his columns. Anti-marijuana propaganda was not limited to newspapers. In 1936, a film was released called Reefer Madness, which painted marijuana smokers as rapists, addicts, and monsters. This film was aimed at instilling a fear of the drug into the younger generations, thus ensuring that they grew up to support and continue Anslinger's policies. The effects of this social manipulation are still strong in our own time. Marijuana was made illegal in the US because of the ability of American industries to influence and bully their way into altering American laws. Marijuana was made illegal internationally because of the ability of the United States to influence and bully other nations. Only now are we beginning to clean up the mess and truly come to understand a plant that has been used by humanity for thousands of years. But why has marijuana remained illegal for so long? One answer to that question lies in the profits of America's pharmaceutical companies. Realizing that it is impossible to own a plant from a naturally growing plant, which can be grown by anyone, pharmaceutical companies consistently conspire to keep the drug out of American hands unless they can profit from American wallets. After claiming that marijuana has no medical benefits and classing it as a Schedule 1 drug, the US government has allowed pharmaceutical companies to develop a synthetic version of medical marijuana called Marinol, a drug with side effects which include vomiting, nausea and diarrhea. Marinol is far less effective and more dangerous than the actual cannabis plant. Patients report that it is either not working, making some symptoms worse, has unreliable effects, or that its effects are too intense. However, many patients are faced with a limited choice: take Marinol, which is covered by their health insurance, or use the more effective natural cannabis treatments and risk breaking the law. Because Marinol is covered by health insurance, pharmaceutical companies are guaranteed payment. Marinol can be controlled and produced by pharmaceutical companies, and therefore a profit can be made from those who are suffering. The pharmaceutical industry sees natural medical marijuana as a threat. Every year, pharmaceutical companies pay the US government millions of dollars to keep marijuana illegal at the federal level, thus inhibiting the proper research of the drug, stopping its widespread use and ensuring profits. Alcohol is another industry which heavily lobbies the US government to keep marijuana illegal. Marijuana is a safer recreational drug than alcohol. Alcohol causes violence, serious accidents, diseases, and is highly susceptible to abuse. Marijuana, on the other hand, is harmless in comparison. Alcohol companies are afraid of losing profits to competition with a potential recreational marijuana industry should the drug become more widespread and legal. It seems odd that our culture often encourages alcohol abuse, especially in colleges, whilst vilifying marijuana. Overdosing on alcohol can easily cause death, either from alcoholic poisoning or from accidents. Marijuana doesn't even give users a hangover. Imagine a world in which marijuana had always been legal, but alcohol was illegal. How would anyone be able to justify the legalization of alcohol, a drug which causes the deaths of 90,000 Americans every year and has a history of causing violence, illness and serious accidents? A drug which endangers not only the user but those around them. Almost double the number of Americans die every year from alcohol abuse than all the Americans who died during the Vietnam War combined, and around 20 times more than all the American troops killed in Iraq. Marijuana, on the other hand, kills no one and has a plethora of medical applications. One drug is legal and even encouraged, the other is demonised and criminalised. Perhaps unsurprisingly, the third major group lobbying for marijuana's illegality in the USA are prisons. Prisons in America do not merely act in the interests of public safety, they exist for profit. The more inmates a private prison can lock away, the better its chances of profiting from contracts. Marijuana users, therefore, being one of the most incarcerated groups, are also a highly profitable group to lock away. Madam Justice is not blind, but in America she only sees the colour green. It's time to end the lies, the hypocrisy and the profiteering. It's time for the American government to right the wrongs of previous administrations and decriminalise one of the most useful drugs ever discovered by mankind. Pharmaceutical industry, alcohol companies, the US prison complex, for far too long have had an indecent amount of control over US government policy. Governments should not act in the interests of a select group to the detriment of the majority. Perhaps what could open government eyes is the immense potential for profit in the marijuana industry. It is estimated that by 2018 the marijuana industry in states where it has been legalised will see profits of $11 billion, rising to $21 billion in 2021. If marijuana was legalised at the federal level, the medical marijuana industry could see a boom not only in scientific research and discovery, but also in profits and economic growth. The US could be a world leader in medical marijuana industry. From the very beginnings of human history, mankind has recognised and utilised the medical benefits of the cannabis plant. In recent times, new scientific studies are proving that early man was no fool. Medical marijuana has the potential to treat a range of illnesses and conditions from cancer to PTSD. However, further research into these areas of application have been hampered by the misguided policies of the US federal government, policies founded upon lies, greed and even racism, policies perpetuated by an unjust culture of lobbying from powerful groups who do not have the best interest of America's patients at heart. Real good could be done in our time by the federal legalisation of marijuana. People suffering from debilitating diseases, chronic pain and even the trauma of combat could seriously be helped by scientific research into the medical applications of marijuana.